In its 10, surrogate mother. Plenty of members of the FNAF community lean towards the idea that Ballora, an animatronic introduced in Sister Location, was an attempt at recreating a mother figure for William's children, hence her motherly features, her mini-renas, and her song, which we also believe is meant to represent a woman who William was blocking out or ran away from in the aftermath of his children's deaths. Some also believe the animatronic to be possessed by the spirit of the mother of the Afton kids, who either died in a car accident, as one unofficial music video suggested, or via brutal murder at the hands of her husband after discovering his evil deeds. It could also have been that the death of his wife started William to killing. However, we know that Ballora is most likely not possessed by the mother thanks to the novels, where it's revealed that the Funtime animatronics were made using the remnant of the original 5 animatronics, which contained the souls of Jeremy, Fritz, Susie, Gabriel, and Cassidy. So there wouldn't really be enough room for the soul of a mother who would have had to die after the animatronics were created, which would be after the missing children's incident. Yeah. And at 9, witness. The unfortunate scooping of Elizabeth Afton is really what ended up changing William's motives. At least we think so, since in the novels once he sees the original animatronics possessed, his goal changes to search for eternal life and making himself immortal. But in the games, could it have been that the baby scooping is what changed him? I mean, it would make sense, especially with the fact that Crying Child, one of William's other kids, may have seen it happen. It would explain a lot if Crying Child did indeed see the scooping, the stomach mouths on the nightmare animatronics, William keeping an eye on him using cameras and stuffed animals with security cameras and speakers inside, and this could be the moment that William learns about possession and that somehow his daughter was kept alive inside the animatronic, hence why he says "I will put you back together" when his son is dying after pulling the plug. He thinks that he can save him like how his daughter stays alive in Baby. Little does he know that you need agony to allow for possession, which only happens at the moment of death, not after. And at 8, Mustard Man. The most confusing part of FNAF 6 has got to be the fan name Mustard Man from the Midnight Motorist minigame. No character until this point has been identified with the color orange. It was even made explicitly clear in the Freddy Files Updated Edition book that your character in the minigame is orange, not purple, which leads me to believe that maybe this scene is more than we originally thought. Now, there are 2 groups of people for this character. One group that believes that this is William Afton before remnant injections or something like that, before becoming the shadow of the man he once was, and the other thinks that this could in fact be Henry Emily, the father of Charlotte, in the security puppet minigame from that same game, which could also help support this theory. There isn't really much to go off of, only that this may be William because of the 2 sons, one watching TV wearing a grey shirt like Mike from the FNAF 4 minigames, who goes home to watch Immortal and the Restless after work in Sister Location, and the similarity of the Mustard Man color with the "I will put you back together" color text from FNAF 4. But it may also be Henry's home because of the footprints outside the window, which look an awful lot like Glitchtrap's feet, although this could just be a twisted animatronic or something similar. Yet we never heard about Henry having more kids than Charlotte, not even in the novels, so I don't know. What side are you on? Are you on Team Afton or Team Emily? Let me know in the comments. And at 7, intentional. There is no doubt that the Circus Baby animatronic was made to scoop and grab kids, hence why William warned his daughter and son to stay away from it. But of course, like children do, that only made them want to see her more, at least in Elizabeth's case. And William should have known that. He would have had to know that his kids wouldn't listen and instead get closer, right? Well, maybe he did. Maybe the scooping that took Elizabeth's life was intentional and not a tragic accident after all. I mean, hey, it's possible. Maybe Elizabeth saw something that she didn't quite understand, and William didn't want her figuring it out later in life. Or maybe he had a theory about possession before this moment and wanted to test it. Or maybe he wanted to immortalize his daughter in an animatronic that was made specifically for her. I mean, if it was an accident, William would be pissed, and that would send him into a spiral that would have surely gotten him caught. So how did he keep his cool? Because he knew it was going to happen. And at 6, the beginning. The origins of William Afton is something the games have very much left unexplored. Anytime we see an event in this series, it was while William was killing. We never really, to our knowledge at least, see him before he's on his murderous path. So, what gives? What's his origin? Why did he start killing? I mean, at this point we know more about Rick Sanchez, and that's saying something. I mean, he literally started this season of Rick and Morty saying, "Don't establish a canonical backstory with me." Either way, what could have possibly triggered this kind of reaction? Now, I'm no profiler, but my sister watches a lot of Criminal Minds and I've seen all of Bones, so I am nowhere near close to qualified. There could be many things: the death of his wife, divorce, hell, maybe a bad song played on the radio. But while we may not know what it is, we do know what it can't be. We know that the death of his children cannot be the reason he started killing. Since Elizabeth got scooped by Baby, who was built to be a murder robot, and Crying Child saw it happen, hence the nightmare animatronics and the empty girls room in FNAF 4. We know that nothing else happens to these kids as far as we've seen, and we have no idea about the mother or the baby mama of these kids, but maybe there wasn't one to begin with. Halfway through in at number 5, kidnapping. Now, this is one of Amanda's theories and she seems dead set on it. So what if the Afton kids were kidnapped? What if they were never William's kids to begin with? I mean, it would explain a few things. Why there's no mother, first of all, because while yes, you need to have a female to have a biological child, your kids don't have to be biological. So could William have kidnapped them? Maybe. I mean, he does keep a hell of an eye on them, installing cameras everywhere as evidenced by his psychic friend Fredbear plushes that we can see in basically every screen of the FNAF 4 minigames, and it would also explain the line of "the baby isn't mine" from The Immortal and the Restless, despite the kid looking exactly like his father and even becoming a bat. Like we hear Michael say in his final speech, "They didn't recognize me at first, but then they thought I was you." Michael looks exactly like William, but Vlad kept insisting that the baby isn't mine. Could this be the case with his children? Maybe something to chew on. In at 4, Clara Afton. Speaking of Immortal and the Restless, what about Clara? A seemingly random character that made her first debut as the mother of Vlad's child, and since Vlad was linked to William through the purple blazer... Oh wait. This instantly linked Clara to the never-before-seen mother of his children, especially in a game where they also introduced Ballora, who, as I said earlier, could have been intended to be a surrogate mother. However, the community instantly started calling the mother Clara Afton, and I never liked this. While Clara could very well represent the mother, why would the character on the show share the same name? I mean, William's equivalent in that show is named Vlad, so why would the mother have the same name as her on-screen counterpart? It just makes no sense. Yet people treat the name of Clara Afton as canon. While yes, as humans we crave answers and our minds try to fill in our gaps in knowledge with answers, that's what causes overthinking, there's been no confirmation as far as I know about this. And I'm sure that it would have been mentioned in the Freddy files if it was actually important. Actually, in the Freddy files, it calls Clara his mistress, not his ex or something, putting yet another hole in that oh so popular theory. Also, let's be honest. She's Clara Clayton. Getting close to the end in at number 3, cheating. Now, what if instead the kids weren't kidnapped, but instead illegitimate? Once upon a time, I had a theory that Clara from The Immortal and the Restless didn't represent the wife, but instead Henry's wife, and I had quite a bit of evidence and logic to back it up. In short, Clara is meant to be William's mistress. As I just mentioned, it's in the Freddy files, but Clara seems to share a few similarities with Henry as well. Burning down Vlad's house, which Henry does countless times, well, not his house, but you know what I mean, as well as demanding he take more responsibility, which Henry could have been doing in reference to the business, their baby. But ultimately, the baby they have in the show is biological, and his mistress ultimately rejecting him to stay with her husband could have been the stressor William needed to flip his lid, killing kids since they represent why Clara would have stayed with Henry, and then getting the child that actually caused her to stay, Charlotte. And Clara knew that they were in danger, so she told Henry everything, causing him to take precautions for his daughter in the form of the security puppet without making his daughter freak out, letting her still live a normal life while he knew that the puppet would protect her. Well, until it didn't. Penultimately in at number 2, MikeBot. Michael Afton as a robot has been proposed as an idea since the release of The Fourth Closet, and honestly, to me, it still makes a lot of sense. William could have wanted another son, one that would look just like him instead of the mother, or that didn't come from the woman who broke his heart, or maybe someone to just look after the kids while he went to work, so he made Michael. This is only enhanced by Sister Location, where Michael is somehow able to survive being scooped and stuffed like a Thanksgiving turkey key with Ennard, and then somehow able to survive vomiting it out of his throat. That entire 6'2" hunk of metal being ejected out your throat with no warning, no lube, no spit, just metal tearing through your esophagus. Michael even admits in the final monologue that he should be dead, but he's not, and Baby knew that he wouldn't die. How could this make sense? Honestly, at this point, only if he was a robot. It also explains how Ennard would have been able to put himself inside his body, he wrapped around the endoskeleton, and why he couldn't only die in the FNAF 6 fire. All signs point to Mike being a robot, so... what could get any more intense than that? Actually, finally, in at number 1, robots. A whole family of robots, of course. Think about it. Eventually, all of the Afton family members end up becoming robots in some way or another, right? Let's go down the list. Mike was either always a robot or gets controlled by Ennard, who is a robot. Elizabeth gets scooped by Baby and possesses her. William gets spring-locked and becomes Springtrap and later Scraptrap. Crying Child either possesses Golden Freddy or his father, becoming an animatronic through Springtrap while keeping his father alive in that suit. And the mother is represented by Ballora, who also ends up getting shoved into Michael. Also, this whole family dynamic is weird, honestly. Like, they literally made Mike's sister shove herself inside of him. And the whole like ships thing between these characters is wrong. Don't get me started on that. I'm glad I didn't have to make that list. Amanda also thinks that maybe all the Afton kids were robots, but I feel like that's disproven by Elizabeth possessing Baby, unless she was the only actual biological kid. Crying Child Circuit's getting crushed by Fredbear makes more sense than his skull though, just saying.
Number 10, Crying Child's fate. Possibly Evan's fate would be an appropriate title of this as well, assuming that Evan is actually the true name for CC. Crying Child meets a terrifying end. This poor victim, and likely also offspring of William Afton's, ends up having his birthday at Fredbear's and is seemingly tormented by his older brother during it. Though really, why Crying Child is such a fan of Fredbear's when the animatronics terrify him, I don't really get that. But I guess that's also a lot of the FNAF fanbase, who like to be scared, so maybe CC is scared too but is also a fan? I don't know. Either way, Crying Child's brother decides the best way to tease him is to take him up to the stage and lift him up to give Fredbear a big kiss. His brother and his friends stick CC's head in the animatronic, but something goes awfully wrong, and the animatronic bear chomps down on CC's head, crushing it. While CC does survive the accident, he never fully recovers and shortly after dies as a result of his injuries. Number 9, Elizabeth's fate. Elizabeth probably is one of the saddest stories of all of the Afton family members. When she was young, all she wanted to do was play with Circus Baby, the animatronic that her father had supposedly made for her. Unfortunately, this didn't end up working out. Well, it kinda did work out, but not in a good way. William told her both that he'd made the animatronic for her, but also that she should be cautious around it, and that she would need to keep her distance. Kinda some contradicting stuff there, Mr. Afton. In the end, Elizabeth snuck off to play with Circus Baby, being lured away from the group by ice cream. She then ended up being devoured by the animatronic. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists on the Afton family and all of the mysteries within the Afton family, because there are many, please be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. I love diving into all the mysteries and all the horrors. Number 8, Circus Baby. After her death at the hands of Circus Baby, Elizabeth would actually become one with the animatronic, with her soul possessing it and going on to live within that animatronic. Elizabeth's soul would then become trapped within Circus Baby. In Sister Location, it seemed as though the knowledge of his sister's fate was what inspired Michael Afton to get a job at the underground facility, in hopes of freeing her. It's unclear whether Michael was doing this of his own volition, or whether he was compelled to do so by his father William. Number 7, Michael failed. In the end, Michael failed his mission though to free his sister's spirit. There is an ending where he escapes the facility and his true fate, but we'd also learn that the real ending involved him being harmed simply because he came to try and free his sister. Oh no, just I guess kind of like a wrong place, wrong time scenario. In the ending where you as Michael do survive and get away, it's implied that Circus Baby knows the reason why Michael has come, and actually attempts to bait him from leaving his safe room in order to confront her and attempt to fulfill his mission to save his sister. Either way that you finish the game though, the fact remains that Michael failed to save Elizabeth, who still is trapped within Baby, or I guess what's left of her, by the end of the game. Number 6, Michael's fate. Michael doesn't just fail at being unable to save his sister, but he also potentially loses his own life in the process. Unless of course he was an animatronic the whole time, which could be very well possible at this point. The true ending of Sister Location finished with Michael getting scooped by Ennard and having his insides replaced by the amalgamation of Sister Location animatronics, who now occupy that endoskeleton, Ennard. This is how they are able to escape the facility, through Michael. Although Michael seemingly still somehow survives this, not really dying on the inside despite being without presumably most, if not all, of his internal organs. He continues walking around as normal until his flesh has rotted, and then then he vomits up the parts of the endoskeleton within him, collapsing to the ground, as we can assume there would be really nothing left inside of him to hold him up. Probably didn't even have bones left after that big scoop after all. However, he is somehow revived by Circus Baby's voice, reassuring him that he won't die. You won't die, you won't die. Now, presumably undead, Michael continues on in his life forever changed. Number 5. William's profession. One of the creepiest things about William Afton, just to begin with, is his involvement in these family restaurants featuring live bands made up of animatronics. Live bands. The fact that he even made animatronics, never mind all the weird mad science that goes with that, is disturbing on its own. I mean, these animatronics all look pretty creepy, and I know all the Freddy chains are meant to be like a place of joy and happiness, at least on paper, but these animatronics do not scream joy and happiness to me. They scream terror, they scream at me to like run for the exit. Everything except joy and happiness really is what they're screaming at me. Also, just sometimes they're just screaming at me because they're jump scaring me. Number 4. William's hobby. One of the scariest truths involving the Afton family is William's role as a killer. I PG-13'd it up and referred to it as his hobby in the title of this point because, well, censorship and such, but it seems as though this hobby is quickly becoming more like his true profession. William has killed multiple people at this point for, well, for a reason we don't really quite fully understand yet. Though I'm sure he has his reasons, right? I mean, he's gotta have reasons, right? Included in the deaths he's had a hand in, albeit likely not directly, are the deaths of his own offspring. All 3 of his kids, if there are 3, I'm pretty sure there's still 3 either way you slice it. Even if Michael is Evan, there's still gotta be an older sibling, and then there's still Elizabeth, so all 3 of his kids seem to have been taken out by animatronics. Although Michael was also weirdly still alive even after his death following sister location, making us wonder just how human he and perhaps his siblings may really be. Maybe they were never human children. Maybe they were all robots. Number 3. Springtrap. Another very dark truth is that William Afton went on to become the monster known as Springtrap. Springtrap is the main antagonist of FNAF 3, where you are a security guard at a sort of haunted house / museum, created to profit off of the terrible and tragic events that seem to destroy Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and seemingly the reputation of Fazbear Entertainment's reputation besides. William Afton was chased by the spirits of his victims who had come to possess the animatronic suits. He chose to hide in a spring-lock Bonnie suit, but water coming into contact with it caused the spring locks to loosen, malfunction, and they tore through William's organs and body, presumably, trapping him within the suit and in theory killing him. Though of course he seems pretty lively in FNAF 3 as the only true and physical antagonist. And I believe that's after 30 years of him being like sort of locked away, so I guess he's like a spirit possessing the animatronic, or he's still alive. I have a lot of questions. Number 2. Stitch Wraith. When you really think about it, William was even involved in the creation of Stitch Wraith, which is pretty astounding and also horrifying. According to the Fazbear Frights book, William was the one responsible for Andrew's death, and Andrew is one of the souls who would go on to possess or become the Stitch Wraith. Initially, Andrew tied himself to William, preventing him from dying in an attempt to torment him. You'd think making your killer immortal would kinda be a bad idea, but I guess Andrew's whole thing was more selfish, not really caring about preventing any further killings or deaths, more wanting to make sure that William lived on so that William could suffer ever more. We learn of Andrew's story in The Man in the Room 1280 from the 5th Fazbear Frights book, Bunny Call. Number 1. Immortal William. Despite the fact that William has seemingly died multiple times, it appears that he must somehow be immortal. Whether that's thanks to Andrew, even after Andrew left him, or is something that William did to himself, or is perhaps just a coincidence. Every time William seemingly dies in the FNAF series, he comes back. He's as resilient as Michael Myers at this point. He just dies and he keeps coming back no matter what. He's been spring-locked, burned alive in a building twice, the second time around seemingly locked up and unable to escape, and yet now he is back as Glitchtrap. This time he has returned through someone scanning a barcode from a Spring Bonnie suit that I suppose he still somehow possessed in some capacity, as it downloaded his spirit, his soul, or his essence into the game, allowing William to live once more. I'm telling you, if you ever think William has finally died, do not believe it, because he hasn't.
In a 10 Clara Afton. Okay, let's talk about the big one first, even if I don't like it. Clara is a character from The Immortal and the Restless, a TV show from the FNAF universe featured after every night in sister location. The soap opera features two characters named Vlad and Clara, and their son. Vlad is a vampire and wears a purple suit, linking him to William, and Clara is just a normal girl who had his baby. Vlad keeps claiming that the baby isn't his, even though it can literally turn into a bat. Clara, the baby isn't mine. Thanks to the comparison between Vlad and William, everyone thought that Scott was confirming the name of William's wife, or the mother of his children, as Clara. This doesn't really make sense to me, because like why would William stand in and be called Vlad, but the mother have the same name as her TV character? But also it doesn't seem like it's meant to be the mother. Sure, it makes sense, but Clara in the show then goes on to burn down Vlad's house. To me, this is meant to represent William and Henry, the creators of Fazbear Entertainment, the founders of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Vlad is William, who is denying his responsibilities with the company represented by his vampire son. And Clara is meant to be Henry, trying to get him to put in some work instead of being so secretive and then burning down his house, which would represent Fazbear Fright, since Henry had burnt down multiple establishments in an attempt to kill William. At least, that's what it seemed to me. And at 9, A Terrible Fate. This was brought up by MatPat in a video a long time ago. Basically how every Afton will receive a terrible fate, some even worse than death, and you know what? It's pretty true. Let's start with the mother of his children. She's gone. We don't know if she died or if she just abandoned the family, or maybe she figured out what William was capable of doing before he even did it, but she isn't around and is most likely dead. Then Emily, the daughter of William, taken by Baby and ended up possessing the body of the animatronic until it burns away in FNAF 6. Then Crying Child, who gets chomped by Fredbear in 1983 and is told that he will be put back together, but from what we know so far, he isn't. Next we have Michael, who ends up getting his insides removed by a scooping machine and then having Ennard use him as a meat suit. Let it be known that this is also including his baby sister, because she was still possessing Baby, meaning that his sister is wearing him like a three-piece suit on the way to a courtroom. And finally, William, the one who lasted the longest. Not typically something men do. He, despite all of his efforts, bites the dust between FNAF 6 and Help Wanted, presumably just after Ultimate Custom Night. But then he possesses a hard drive and then gets scanned into the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience. Damn, this theory turned out to be true, and that's pretty freaking nuts. And today, Baby Mama. Another theory about the identity of the mysterious Mrs. Afton is that there really isn't a Mrs. Afton. Only a baby mama for the kids that abandoned them and left them with their father because she never really wanted children, or were worried that they would turn out like their father. Or she could have been in their life for a while but then had an accident or maybe had to move out for work and William couldn't leave because of his business. There are more ways to have a family than just married parents. So the idea that the kids didn't have or didn't know their mother is entirely plausible. It could be that William had donated some of his progeny to earn some money to help buy the character of Freddy Fazbear, and those kids were what came of that donation. But then he ended up getting them somehow. I don't know if semantics. There is no guarantee, and honestly that's what I like about this series. Sure, it would have been in the 80s when they would have had their kids, and slightly before, but that doesn't mean that they can't reject social norms. And 7, adoption. Even more so, the kids just may not be his at all. If the child from The Immortal and the Restless is supposed to be a representation of his kids, the kids we all think are his because they turn into a bat or live with him and are disciplined by him could just be adopted, as he keeps saying, the baby isn't mine. William could have simply adopted those children. It would be difficult as a single father to do so, but he owns a successful company so he could easily provide. He also could have a son already, hence why Michael makes fun of and is mean to the Crying Child. We don't know if Emily or Crying Child was born first. They could be twins and are the same age, and William or the adoption agency didn't want to split them up. You know, I mean, it's probably the adoption agency. And at 6, kidnapping. Or I mean, if we're being totally honest, William could have just kidnapped them in order to experiment on them, or make them easier to kill. But then he grew attached to them enough that he told them to stay away from the animatronics, which they obviously didn't end up listening to. The whole idea of possession, however, I don't think came across William's mind until he saw that Elizabeth had possessed Baby. Up until that point, he was probably just killing for the hell of it. Or maybe he started to get Henry to be in so much pain that he had to step away from the company. People have killed for less, so William killing to get control of a business, to push it in a specific direction, or to sell it off so circus babies could work out, that's entirely plausible. He could have kidnapped them because he wanted to seem more innocent, or maybe just so he had an alibi for when he was out slaughtering kids for sport. Halfway through at number 5, cheating. There is another explanation for The Immortal and the Restless that I also find quite interesting. What if it's meant to be William Afton and Henry's wife? If it was meant to be Henry's wife, it would explain William's reluctance to accept that the baby is his, despite it clearly being his. And would explain where his wife went as well, and why we've never heard anything about Charlotte's mother. Both families would have gotten divorced, and it would explain why Vlad and Clara in the end do end up getting back together. Clara may not be William's wife's name, but it could be Henry's wife's name. It would also give William a motive for killing, specifically killing Charlotte. Maybe Charlotte was the last thing keeping Clara from leaving Henry, and without her they could be together. But then William got a taste for it, for taking lives. It would also explain Laura's song. Why would he shut himself away from his own wife when they lose a child? And the way the song goes doesn't sound like it's sung from the perspective of someone who lost a kid. She said it's so good to sing all day, to dance, to spin, to fly away. Why would someone who just lost a kid be singing, dancing, and spinning? I've seen how it affects people, and they weren't singing. This could be Henry's wife trying to get William away from his troubles by going on a trip, by flying away. This explains quite a lot, and it makes a load of sense. And for resurrection. The Afton family is a complicated bunch. They've all suffered terrible fates, and now they've all in some way been resurrected. Let's go over the evidence. William Afton gets spring-locked and is presumed dead, but he isn't. He survived and is now spring-trapped. That's a form of resurrection. 2. He does finally die in FNAF Ultimate Custom Night, but then is scanned into Help Wanted, thus bringing him back again. And in Security Breach, that arm at the end of the gameplay trailer is very clearly meant to be his, suggesting that he will be fully resurrected in that game. If not, he was still resurrected by taking over Vanessa's mind and making another damn furry suit to kill him. That's another form of resurrection. The others are more simple than that. Mrs. Afton is presumably brought back in the form of an animatronic called Ballora, having the animatronic be made in her image and not possessed. There is no evidence of that. William brought her back as a robot without actually making her possessed. He just created her using her idea. Michael was killed by the scooper, but brought back as Ennard and then himself again after Ennard ejects himself out of the skin suit. It's weird. Emily possesses baby after getting killed by her, and the crying child could have been brought back by, and number 3, crying Foxy Bro. I have a whole video on this theory if you'd like to check it out. It's up in the top right corner, because this is kind of complicated. At the end of FNAF 4, crying child dies, and when this happens, we will see William tell him that he will put him back together. Nothing really comes of this line though, at least from what we're told. But if you look at it, crying child could have been brought back as the character we know as Michael, or Foxy Row to some. Michael seems to always be around crying child, and it's the only time that we see him in memories, around crying child. In the original FNAF novel series, the main character known as Charlie is revealed to be one in a series of robots that were made after she was killed early on in her life. That same idea could be what William did to crying child, but instead of making memories about crying child, he gave him new ones that made him believe that he was responsible for his little brother's death, and that would make him stay away from the Fazbear restaurants forever. Of course, until his father makes him go to Sister Location, which isn't really even a Fazbear location, to meet his sister, who knows that he is a robot, hence why she says he won't die, even when getting scooped. A machine that has only been known to scoop robotic parts out of animatronic shells. We don't see any blood on the scooper when it attacks us, our vision only goes red. I really think that this could be where Scott is going. Matt had originally thought so as well, saying that crying child could have been brought back as a robot. And if you want a further explanation, the link is in the iCard. And at 2, reunited. I was gonna sing, but that would get us demonetized. The Afton family has been separated for a while, thanks to, death and taxes. But what if the goal of Security Breach is to bring them all back together? At least, maybe symbolically. This is a wild one, but it's still fun to consider. William is back in the form of Vanny, since he has taken over Vanessa, and will later on most likely get his body back, or at least a body of his own. Next, we have Vanessa herself, who could be some form of relative of the Afton family, or maybe even the mother. It would be insane, I know, but remember, William was working on a solution to aging, or the key to immortality, so it's plausible. If not, she could also be the adult robot version of Elizabeth, the daughter taken by Baby. In the books, Baby is able to transform between looking extremely realistically human and looking like a circus clown thanks to the pins we see on her in Sister Location as well, so it's not as far-fetched as you might assume. Gregory, the child we play as, could very well be the crying child as a robot, or at least a representation of the crying child. And Glamrock Freddy is obviously the big brother Michael, protecting Gregory by letting him hide inside his chest. Wait, if we keep going with that, could Gregory hiding inside of Glamrock Freddy be Scott showing us that crying child was inside Michael, basically confirming my theory? I may have to make another part to that theory with all the new evidence. And like a conspiracy board like what I did for the top 10 reasons Clara is Clara Afton in the background. Did you notice that? Yeah. Finally, in number 1, robots. Every single one of the Afton family members was made into some form of robot, whether it be them possessing a robot or having one made in their image. Let's start with Elizabeth, who becomes a robot when she possesses Circus Baby after being scooped. And then we have Michael, who even if he wasn't a robot version of the crying child, is scooped and gets his insides replaced with robot parts. But Laura is made in the image of William Afton's baby mama or wife, letting her become in essence a robot even if not through possession. William becomes spring-trapped after getting spring-locked, which while not killing him does make him part robot, and now in Security Breach he'll have to be a full robot in order to return to the land of the living. And then finally we have the crying child. If we go with the idea that I'm wrong about him being put back together, he's a tricky one to place as a robot. He gets killed as a person and then fights for his life in a coma in the hospital, right? That's who we play as in FNAF 4. That's why we see flowers, meds, and an IV in the corner next to our bed. But it's in those small details where we can find out why Crying Child became a robot. Life support. While in a coma, you're not really able to do anything. You're unconscious, unable to eat or drink, hence the IV. It's also not uncommon for coma patients to be on life support since they can't really do anything for themselves. Crying Child would most likely have to be on life support, especially because of his younger age.